Welcome back to Cast West Radio. This is First Cast to First Fish, the beginner series built to help the new angler learn fly fishing in a way that feels simple, clear, and actually useful. In the first episode, we talked about what fly fishing actually is. Today, we're talking about something that stops a lot of people before they even begin: gear. Because if you've ever looked into fly fishing gear, you've probably seen a whole lot of stuff real quick. We've got rods, reels, lines, leaders, tippet, waders, boots, net, packs, tools, and fly boxes. And somewhere in there, it can start to feel like you need a full wall of equipment just to go stand in a river. You don't. So this episode is about what fly fishing gear actually does, what matters most, and what you can stop worrying about right now. This is not about building the perfect setup. This is about building a setup that gets you fishing. So let's get into it. I think we should start with the fly rod. This is the piece most people focus on first, and that makes sense. I'm not about keeping secrets, and I'm just going to tell you first thing. For a beginner, a really common all-around trout rod is a 9-foot 5-weight. It is my client rod weight of choice, but you have to ask a question. Where am I going to fish the most? If I'm on the East Coast and I'm fishing in the rhododendron tunnels of North Carolina, I'm going short, maybe an 8.6, a 4-weight or a 5-weight. If I'm in the West fishing the open expanses of Montana, then I'm going at least 9-foot all day. That being said, I cut my teeth fly fishing on the East Coast, and I've never owned anything smaller than a 9-foot rod. I think there's two very important questions we have to answer with choosing a rod, and that's going to be weight and speed of the rod. Let's talk about both in depth, because I feel like this is important, and this could be a big money purchase. So I want to help you get it right. So let's start out with talking about the weight of the rod. Think of this in the terms of a tree. Smaller the twig, easily breaks. It can hold some weight, but not a lot of weight. A bigger trunk of a tree, very thick, can hold a lot of weight, very sturdy, doesn't bend very much. Let's think about our rods that way. This is not an exact science, but one could argue a scale similar to this. So 3 to 5 weight. We're looking at perch, panfish, bluegill, some trout, small bass. Not to be confused with smallmouth bass. I'm just saying smaller weighted bass. 3 to 5 weights can handle about any dry fly or double nymph rigs. I don't normally put streamers on a 5-weight or less because they honestly just lack the power to cast those flies. 6 to 7 weights. These are great for smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, streamers, and some situational things like windy days, because that heavier weight rod helps you punch through the wind on your cast because they're stiffer and they generate power more efficiently. I might even switch over to a 6-weight rod for clients in the later part of the year so that I can fight that fish faster, get them in, get them unhooked, see you later back in the water. Because things that you need to think about while fishing, especially with trout species, is when that water temp starts to get above 62, I start thinking about the fish's survival after the fight. So I may use a larger weight rod just so that I can fight that fish faster, getting back in the water. So then kind of the next category of rods are the 8 to 12 weights. This weight rod, I usually start thinking about coastal fishing. So 8 to 9 weights, I'm thinking snook, red drums, albacore. 10 weights, permit, bonefish, maybe some smaller juvenile tarpon. That 11 to 12, tarpon is my main target, or a large bonefish. You don't need the perfect rod, but you need a rod that's right for the situation. Next, we're going to talk about speed of the rod. This is actually where people start to get confused and just agree with the shop guy, nod your head, and you walk out with a rod that's not made for your style. So let's talk through it. When you hear fast action, medium fast, or also known as moderate action or slow action, what do you think of? I want to give you a way to think about these terms. We cast by loading the rod, and we remember loading the rod is the level of bend in the rod, which for the science guys out there is kind of that potential energy that we store in the rod. Let's think bending the rod, and that bend is what produces that energy. So if I have a fast action rod, it bends mostly at the tip. So if you're only bending a small portion of the rod, then it builds up energy very fast. So your casting speed can be faster, but your timing also needs to be quicker. Medium fast, or another term is moderate. So these rods flex in the top third to the top half of the rod. This is the workhorse of fly rods. They're usually good for most skill levels, most rig setups. They're slightly slower on the casting speed since you have to flex that entire top half. They'll take longer to load versus those faster speed rods. Slow action. These rods, they flex all the way to the handle. They take an enormous amount of patience and timing to load that rod since your loading takes so much longer. And this is where I really love fly shops, because a good, reputable fly shop, if you go in there and you're interested in buying a rod, they'll put lines on 5 or 6 rods and let you cast them. See which ones are fast, moderate, slow, and which ones kind of cater to your casting style. I can't stress this enough. It's very, very important when you're making that rod purchase that you're matching the cadence of your cast to the speed of the rod. The last thing about the rod. Now, when it comes to rods, you'll see a lot of price ranges. Some are affordable, some are very expensive, and yes, expensive rods can be great. But a beginner does not need the fanciest rod on the wall to go stand in the river. You need a rod that feels solid, casts well, matches your cadence, and helps you learn. That's it. A good beginner rod is one that makes you want to keep using it. One caveat to this entire price for the rod conversation: warranty matters. Know what the warranty is for each company that you're buying from. I love the any reason rod companies. Essentially, no matter why it breaks, if you send them the broken bit and a fee, they will send you a new section and you're on your way. That is huge in my opinion. And yes, there are high-end companies that offer no warranty. And if a section gets damaged, then you're just SOL. So do your due diligence. I have seen 2 rods in one day get snapped in a matter of minutes fishing. Not fun, but also not stressful when you know the warranty is solid. Now let's talk about the reel. For you just starting out, the reel is usually not the thing that you need to stress over most. That surprises some people because the reel looks important. And it is important, but for a lot of trout fishing, the reel is mostly there to hold your line and help you stay organized. Now, once you hook a fish, sure, the reel can matter more, but I would honestly argue it is still just sometimes. For bigger fish or different, heavier species, the drag becomes a bigger deal, and honestly, drag, in my opinion, is the most important. Drag is the reel's ability to maintain pressure on the fish without line just leaving the reel. You need that to be easily adjustable while you're fighting the fish. Too little of a drag and the fish just swims away with your line or simply spits the hook because you have no pressure on the fish. Too much drag and the drag overpowers the tippet, which is that last bit of line before your flies, and the fish just breaks off. But when you're first getting started, the reel does not need to be some giant decision. It just needs to match your rod weight, hold the right line. That's it. A balanced outfit matters more than having the most expensive reel in the shop. So if you're just beginning, think of a reel more like this. It should work well, hold your line, pair correctly with your rod, meaning same weight. So if you have a 5-weight rod, Get a 5-weight reel. No need to complicate it more than that. Next up is fly line. Now here's where I would tell a beginner, pay attention. Fly line matters a lot. Remember from episode 1, in fly fishing, the line carries the weight. So the line plays a huge role in how that rod feels and how well you can cast that rod and load that rod. If you've got a decent rod and a poor line, things can feel harder than they need to be. If you've got a decent rod and a solid line, learning usually feels smoother. For most beginners fishing for trout, you're going to want a weight forward, floating line. That's the easiest place to start. Write that down. Now you're going to have 80 companies that are going to try and convince you that their line is better. But when you're just starting out, go for the description I give you. Pick a cool color that matches you, matches your rod, make it fun. But that's the simple answer. Weight forward helps with casting. Floating means the line's going to stay on top of the water, which makes it very versatile when you're beginning. It works for a lot of fishing new anglers are going to do. So if you're wondering where you can keep it simple, this is one of those places. Match the line to the rod, choose a floating line, keep it straightforward. Now, if you're looking at price ranges, there's usually like 3 options. So let's call it a $59, an $89, and a $129 option. I'd go middle of the road, $89, or whatever that equivalent is. It's likely going to have a few features of the expensive line and few of the nicer features maybe of the cheaper line. So now let's talk about 2 pieces that confuse a lot of beginners. Leader and tippet. These are not the same thing. Even though they're connected, the leader is a clear section that attaches to your fly line. It starts thicker, tapers down to thinner. That taper helps transfer energy from the fly line to the fly. Now here comes the confusing part. They usually come in a lot of options, but I'm here to help you and keep things simple. If I am a beginner, I'm going 9 foot, 4X all day long. And that means that leader is 9 foot long and the section at the thinnest is 4X. Then at the end of that, you can add tippet, which is just more thin line that extends the end of your setup, maybe down to your second fly. But tippet helps you replace lost material without constantly cutting back the entire leader. And yes, if you're new, those words can feel annoying at first. That's normal. But here's the simple version. The fly line is the heavy colored line that comes out of your reel. The leader is the cleared taper section that connects to that. The tippet is a thinner, clear line at the end where your flies get tied on. That's enough for now. You do not need to become a line engineer. You just need to know what each piece is doing. Later in the series, when we talk about setup, this will make even more sense. Let's talk about actual flies. This is the fun part. This is also the part where beginners often buy way too many too fast. I am going to admit I did exactly that. You do not need a giant fly collection to begin. You really don't. It's better to have a small group of confidence flies and learn when and how to fish them than to have 100 patterns you do not understand yet. As a beginner, you're trying to learn the basics. What does this fly imitate? Where they fish in the water column? And when they make sense to use. That matters more than having 12 versions of the same bug. Over time, don't worry, you'll build your boxes out. That happens naturally. But in the beginning, a simple selection is enough. A few dry flies, a few nymphs, a few streamers if you want them. Keep it manageable. Because once again, the goal is not to own everything. The goal is to know what to tie on and why. I have 2 episodes related just to flies coming up. So don't worry, we're going to go over each of these things individually and you're going to understand. Now let's cover the small stuff. These are the things, the little tools that make life easier on the water. Nippers, forceps or pliers, a fly box, and a net. What do each one of these do? Nippers, they're going to help you cut the line. If I had it to do all over again, the pair of nippers that I buy first would be a pair that has changeable jaws. That's the part that actually cuts. A lot of these companies will build nippers that you can't change the jaws, and you just end up rebuying nippers every couple years. Get a pair that you can exchange the jaws. Next up is forceps. These things help you remove flies from the fish and help you pinch the barbs. What I would look for in a pair of forceps, I would look for 2 segments in the jaws. I want part of the jaws to be flat and the other part to be rigid. That way I can use the flat part to flatten the barb, and I can use the ridged part to help pull the hook out of the fish's mouth if it may be a little bit too deep. A fly box. This keeps your flies organized and protected. A net makes landing fish easier, quicker, and usually better for the fish too. A little bit of a soapbox here on the net. Go with a silicone net. Don't use a cloth net or the old string nets. They really hurt the fish and can damage their gills. Go with silicone. Probably a little pro tip for the net. If I had to do it all over again, my first walk wading net would have been a little longer than I really thought I would need. The little short stubby handle nets make it really difficult to net the fish when you're still holding on to the rod as well at full bend. Those little bit longer handles really help you reach out there and grab that fish a lot quicker. But all of these are not flashy pieces of gear, but they matter. Because once you're out there, those little things really become big things. Trying to bite off line with your teeth, man, that gets old fast. Trying to remove a fly from a fish without forceps, that's harder than it needs to be. Trying to keep loose flies in your pocket, that's just asking for trouble. So these small tools are worth having. They make the whole experience smoother. Next are waders and boots. Do you need them right away? I would say sometimes yes, sometimes no. Depends on where you're fishing and what time of year it is. If you're fishing cold rivers and moving water or conditions where staying dry matters, then yes, waders and boots become pretty important. If you're fishing in warm weather from the bank or in a place where you don't need to step in the water much, maybe not right away. So this is not a one-size-fits-all, but here's what I would say. Good wading boots matter more than people think because slipping around on rocks is not fun, and it's definitely not a good way to learn. Feeling stable in the water really helps your confidence a lot. Waders, when you need them, make those longer days way more comfortable. But again, don't let this stop you from starting. Not every trip has to be some full river mission. You can begin simply. So now, how are we going to carry all this stuff? That's another thing beginners wonder is whether they need a vest or a sling pack, hip pack, backpack, chest pack, or some mix of all of them. No, not at first. I challenge you. You need a way to carry a few essentials. That's all. Some people like a vest, some like sling packs, some like hip packs. I've had them all. There's no perfect answer. The best one is the one that helps you carry what you need without annoying you all day. So I challenge you in the beginning, just use something you already have to carry that little stuff so that you don't get sucked into buying all the stuff at once so that you can overload that bag and show up like a guide to the river. So as a beginner, you probably don't need much. You can need a small fly box, extra leader or tippet or both, nippers, forceps, maybe some water and a snack. That's a pretty light load, so don't overthink storage right now. Your system will grow with time, I promise. So let's start to wrap this up. If I had to rank what matters most for beginners, I'd say this. First, get a balanced setup that fits the kind of fishing you want to do. Second, Keep it simple enough that you actually understand it. Third, spend more time fishing than shopping. And the last part matters because gear is fun to talk about. It's fun to compare. It's fun to collect. But gear does not replace time on the water. And beginners do not improve by owning more stuff. They improve by using simple stuff often. That's how you start learning what actually matters to you. You'll figure out pretty quickly what you use a lot, what stays in the pack, what feels helpful, what you don't really need. And the kind of learning is worth more than reading 20 gear lists online. So let's try to go to the river with this mindset. This is the one I'd like you to have. Get your basic rod for your price point and reel setup that makes sense. Use a solid floating line, get leader and tippet, carry a few flies and a few tools, add things as you need them. That's enough. You don't need to earn your way into fly fishing by buying all the right things first. You can start simple. In fact, that's probably the best way to start because simple setups teach clear lessons, and clear lessons build confidence. So that's beginner gear. Didn't give you every detail, didn't give you every option or every opinion, just gave you the stuff that matters most when you're starting out. And if you feel a little less overwhelmed after this episode, then that's the point. In the next episode, we're going to talk about how to set up a fly rod from start to finish, how the whole system connects, what goes where, and how to make it all make sense. Thanks to everyone for listening. This has been Cast West Radio. This is the gear episode of First Cast to First Fish, and I'll see you on the next one.